On December 24, 1991, in the tranquil and remote area of Punta Ireland, a 23-year-old visitor from Virginia was enjoying a bike ride when she suddenly vanished. Her absence was quickly noticed and a search ensued. Hours later, Dana was discovered in a remote, overgrown area along a fishing trail. She was barely alive, having suffered severe injuries from a brutal assault. Her body was bloodied and battered, and she had clearly been subjected to a horrific beating and sexual assault. Her mangled bicycle was found several miles away, suggesting that she had been struck by a vehicle and then abducted. The brutality of the crime shocked the local community and drew national attention. Dana Ireland was not just a visitor. She was the embodiment of a safe and serene vacation that turned into a nightmare. The intense pressure to solve the case came not only from the community, but also from Dana's grieving family and the wider public. But there were no witnesses, and the remote location of the crime scene offered little in the way of forensic evidence, casting a long shadow over the island of Hawaii. Despite immediate efforts to find the perpetrator, the case quickly went cold. However, in 1994, a potential break in the case emerged. This development came from John Gonsalves, who was seeking to reduce his own legal troubles. Gonsalves claimed that his half-brother, Frank Pauling Jr., had information about Dana's case. This led to Pauling, who was already incarcerated on unrelated charges, providing a series of statements to the police. Pauling initially claimed that he had been in a car with two other men, Ian Schweitzer and Sean Schweitzer, on the night of the crime. He alleged that they had run into Dana with their vehicle, abducted her, and then committed the brutal assault. However, his statements were riddled with inconsistencies and changed multiple times. Despite this, Pauling's claims were taken seriously by the authorities, given the lack of other leads in the case. In May 1994, Pauling made a confession, which he later recanted, stating that he had been pressured and that his statements were fabricated in hopes of receiving leniency for himself and his half-brother. Despite the recantation, Ian and Sean Schweitzer, along with Pauling, were indicted and subsequently convicted based on Pauling's testimony and the accounts of other jailhouse informants. The prosecution's case heavily relied on the statements made by Pauling and additional testimonies from jailhouse informants, rather than solid physical evidence. The intense pressure to resolve the high-profile case likely contributed to the reliance on these testimonies, despite their questionable reliability. In 2000, Ian Schweitzer was convicted and sentenced to 130 years in prison for second-degree slaying, kidnapping, and sexual assault. Frank Pauling Jr. received life sentences for his supposed role in the crime. Sean Schweitzer eventually accepted a plea deal, which included a reduced sentence in exchange for a guilty plea and a statement against his brother Ian. Despite the convictions, questions about the integrity of the investigation and the reliability of the testimonies lingered. The breakthrough in the Dana Ireland case came with advancements in DNA testing technology, which offered a glimmer of hope in resolving lingering doubts about the guilt of Ian Schweitzer, Sean Schweitzer, and Frank Pauling Jr. After their convictions, the Hawaii Innocence Project, along with the New York Innocence Project, began advocating for a re-examination of the evidence using new DNA testing methods. Key pieces of evidence were retested, including a Jimmy's t-shirt found near Dana's body, which had been soaked in her blood. During the original trials, this t-shirt was a crucial piece of evidence used by the prosecution to link the accused to the crime. Witnesses had claimed that the shirt belonged to Frank Pauling Jr., despite his denials. However, the new DNA tests revealed that the DNA on the t-shirt did not match any of the three convicted men. Instead, it pointed to an unknown male referred to as unknown male number 1. Furthermore, additional items from Dana Ireland's sexual assault kit were also retested. The results once again excluded Ian Schweitzer, Sean Schweitzer, and Frank Pauling Jr., and pointed to the same unidentified male. This compelling new evidence strongly suggested that none of the convicted men were involved in the crime, and that the real perpetrator had not been identified. Armed with this new DNA evidence, the legal teams representing Ian Schweitzer filed petitions to overturn his conviction. The court hearings featured expert testimony on the DNA results, which clearly demonstrated the innocence of the convicted men. After a thorough review, a judge vacated Ian Schweitzer's conviction in January 2023, leading to his immediate release from prison after more than 2 decades behind bars. Upon his release, Ian Schweitzer experienced a whirlwind of emotions, ranging from relief and gratitude to frustration and a renewed sense of purpose. Speaking publicly, he emphasized his deep appreciation for the efforts of the Hawaii Innocence Project and the New York Innocence Project, whose relentless advocacy and expertise in DNA testing were instrumental in securing his exoneration. Schweitzer's reflections on his wrongful conviction highlighted the severe flaws in the criminal justice system that led to his 23-year imprisonment. He expressed a profound sense of loss, comparing his wrongful conviction to the very crimes he was accused of. "I feel like they butchered 25 years of my life. I feel like they kidnapped me away from my family. I feel like they raided me of being a son," he stated. Despite his exoneration, Schweitzer remains acutely aware that justice for Dana Ireland has not been fully served. The real perpetrator, identified only as unknown male number 1 through DNA evidence, was still at large. This unresolved aspect of the case fuels Schweitzer's ongoing quest for justice. He expressed a desire to continue advocating for the use of advanced forensic techniques to identify the true attacker and bring closure to Dana Ireland's family. Finally, in July 2024, the authorities uncovered the identity of unknown male number 1, Albert Lauro Jr., a 57-year-old resident of Kapoho, Hawaii. Lauro, who lived near the location where Ireland was attacked, had never been on the police radar throughout the decades-long investigation. The breakthrough came after DNA collected from Lauro's discarded utensil matched the DNA found at the crime scene, known as unknown male number 1. Further confirmation was obtained through a court-ordered buccal swab. Despite this critical match, police initially did not have sufficient evidence to arrest Lauro immediately for taking a life. Shortly after providing the DNA sample, Lauro committed suicide on July 29, 2024. He was found dead in his home, leading to further scrutiny of the police's handling of the investigation. This tragic turn of events occurred just days after his DNA was confirmed to match the evidence found at the crime scene. Despite Lauro's death, the investigation into the Dana Ireland case is far from over. Authorities are now examining Lauro's past and potential motives, as well as any connections he might have had to the crime scene. The ongoing efforts aim to bring full closure to the case and ensure that all unanswered questions are addressed. Sarah Ann Geer, a 13-year-old girl from Cloverdale, California, was a typical teenager in her community. She was known for her friendly demeanor and had a circle of friends who shared similar interests. On the morning of May 24, 1982, her life was tragically cut short in a brutal crime that would haunt the small town for decades. On that fateful day, Sarah was reported missing by her family after she failed to return home. A search ensued, and later that day, her body was discovered behind a Main Street apartment building in Cloverdale. The scene was horrifying. Sarah had been assaulted, strangled, and left partially clothed. The brutal nature of the crime shocked the local community and left a lasting scar on those who knew her. The initial response from the Cloverdale Police Department was swift. Investigators cordoned off the area and began meticulously collecting evidence. Among the items gathered were physical samples that, at the time, could not be fully analyzed due to the limitations of forensic technology. Despite the police's efforts to canvass the area and interview potential witnesses, no immediate leads emerged. The impact of Sarah's passing on the community was profound. Her friends and family were devastated, grappling with the sudden and violent loss of a beloved daughter and friend. The town, known for its quiet and safe atmosphere, was gripped by fear and sorrow. For nearly 40 years, Sarah Ann Geer's case remained unsolved. In 2021, nearly 40 years after Sarah's tragic death, the Cloverdale Police Department, driven by a renewed commitment to solving the case, decided to reopen the investigation. Equipped with modern forensic techniques, they meticulously re-examined the evidence. This renewed effort would soon lead to a breakthrough that would change everything. Determined to bring justice to Sarah and her family, the Cloverdale Police Department contracted with a private investigation firm specializing in cold cases. This firm brought in experts equipped with the latest technological advancements, allowing for a fresh examination of the preserved evidence. The collaboration aimed to offer new perspectives or uncover previously overlooked details that could lead to identifying the perpetrator. A critical step in the reopened investigation was the re-examination of the physical evidence collected at the crime scene, including the DNA samples that had been meticulously preserved over the years. With modern DNA analysis techniques, investigators were able to extract and profile the DNA more accurately and comprehensively than was possible in the 1980s. The breakthrough in the case came when the DNA evidence was processed using genetic genealogy technology. This method involves comparing the DNA profile obtained from the crime scene with profiles in genealogical databases. By identifying relatives of the suspect through their DNA, investigators could significantly narrow down the pool of potential suspects. The process was meticulous and required extensive cross-referencing and validation. Investigators built family trees and eliminated individuals who could not have been involved due to factors such as age or location at the time of the crime. This painstaking work eventually paid off in 2021 and led them to James Unick, a 62-year-old man living in Willows, California. James Unick had a history in Cloverdale, which added another layer of complexity to the investigation. In 1985, just 3 years after Sarah's demise, Unick was involved in a hit-and-run incident in Cloverdale. During this incident, he led police on a high-speed chase before eventually being apprehended. Although it was not clear if records from this event directly contributed to identifying him as a suspect in Sarah's case, it demonstrated his familiarity with the area and his potential for violent behavior. Upon identifying Unick as a potential suspect, investigators needed to build a solid case. This involved corroborating the DNA evidence with other findings from the original investigation and any new information that had come to light. The comprehensive review included interviews with individuals who had known Unick and re-evaluating all the evidence in the context of this new lead. In July 2021, the Cloverdale Police Department announced a major breakthrough. James Unick was arrested and charged with the slaying, assault, kidnapping, and lewd and lascivious acts with a minor under 14 by force. The arrest was a pivotal moment, not only for the investigation but also for Sarah's family and the community of Cloverdale, who had waited nearly 40 years for justice. The news of Unick's arrest was met with a mix of relief and sorrow. While it offered a sense of closure, it also brought back the pain and grief of Sarah's brutal slaying. Community members and officials alike expressed their gratitude to the police and forensic experts for their unwavering dedication to solving the case. Cloverdale Police Chief Chris Parker stated that the arrest represented a bittersweet victory for justice, acknowledging the enduring pain of the Geer family while offering solace in the perpetrator's accountability. James Unick, now facing charges for one of Cloverdale's most notorious cold cases, is held without bail in the Sonoma County Jail. As of 2024, the legal proceedings are underway. The Sonoma County Court has scheduled various hearings, including preliminary hearings and status conferences. As the case progresses through the judicial system, The trial's outcome is awaited with high anticipation, and it is expected to bring some measure of closure to the community. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of cold cases.